Joining us in our conversation this morning, he leads the USAWA agenda. Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa is with us this morning. Good to have you, Dr. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming. Vital for us to have this conversation this morning, as it is vital for us to continue with it into the coming months, and as we have over the last few. But before we get into it this morning, Dennis is going to tell you where we are this year, this day.
This day in this year.
Okay.
Yes. Today we are in Morocco, a beautiful country, and it's one country that recognized United States in 1777. You know, an old country that one would talk about, the oldest monarchy in the world, and the economy is being pushed by tourism, and they export a lot of phosphate that even us in Kenya use when it comes to matters to do with agriculture. Their cuisine, Okari says, wants to go there to just eat their food. When he goes there, couscous is one of the meals that is on the table, including some very sumptuous meat that they do have there, and spices as well. But let's go to the proverb today. Whoever has parents has wings. Whoever has parents has wings. How would you interpret that?
Because parents are vital in our destinations in life. They provide us with the base from which to fly. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Wow, the base from which to fly. That's great. A great way to look at that for sure. So, Dr. Manyasa, this is, you breathe this stuff, and the milestones achieved and also the frustrations experienced find their way in and out of your lungs day in, day out. We're looking into CBE, but more specifically, we're looking into the pathways chosen by grade 9 learners who will be grade 10 learners come January 2026. In the second term of the year, they made this selection. That means now that the schools themselves will be categorized as STEM schools, humanities school, art schools. You cannot choose a humanities pathway and then attend a STEM school. So far, I am assuming. Maybe you can correct me as we go ahead. But now, as we are seeing, we are hearing that a crisis is looming in the countdown to grade 10 intake. Barely 5 months before grade 9 learners join grade 10. And remember, these the poor souls are the guinea pigs of this system. They started out as grade 3 learners. 6 years down the line, we are still gambling with them. They will join grade 10 in January. But the process is descending into confusion as it stumbles from one crisis to another. The Ministry of Education has changed the rules so many times that parents, teachers, and even school heads are unsure what January will look like for the first senior secondary school cohort under the competency-based curriculum, which is now under the curriculum competency-based education. In just 8 months, the ministry under the leadership of Cabinet Secretary Julius Ogamba has made and reversed key decisions on the number of subjects to be taught, which ones are compulsory, and how schools now are categorized. At the same time, students snubbed thousands of senior schools in the recently concluded selection exercise as they fight for admission at top institutions. So what we see is already happening, whereby they said, okay, STEM school, these are the ones that we are going to pick. Some schools were not selected at all. At the same time, the latest U-turn by the ministry has expanded the number of subjects from 7 to 10 and has withdrawn the list of compulsory areas and reignited controversy over the return of high-stakes examinations. Now, let's stop there. Because this education was supposed to be wholesome in nature, and it was supposed to take away the reliance on examinations and insist on competency or wholesome education, whereby you know the stuff as opposed to learn the stuff to pass an exam. Now, with all of these things happening at the same time, we want to take an outlook today and say, okay, what needs to happen to make this thing run smoothly before we take these poor guinea pigs and put them back into this system again come January 2026?
A lot needs to happen. But one of the things that need to happen is for us to acknowledge where we are at and accept that there are schools which are not ready. And if we accept that there are schools which are not ready, then to me, I think everything else in the Ministry of Education need to stop and we focus on making the schools that are not ready to admit learners in January. Why am I saying that there are schools which are not ready? As per the ministry's own admission, over 3,000 schools were not selected by anyone to join them as senior school. And yet, in the criteria for placement, we had given the learner's choice as priority, number one, for where the learner will be placed. 3,000 schools don't have anyone who chose them. That means that the learners who go into those schools are going to be learners forced into those schools because they never chose. That is one. The second is we have said merit will be the criteria. And for merit, it's straightforward. We're going to look at exam results and determine where we place learners based on exam results. And this is where the risk of the return of the high-stakes exam is, because we have many schools not chosen by anyone, and yet people must be placed there. So we will revert to the merit criteria. And based on merit, we will force some learners into schools they never chose. And so because of that, the return of high-stakes exams is with us.
But wasn't that bound to happen?
Yeah.
By the time you're saying select, it's bound to happen that certain schools will be selected and that certain schools will not be selected. It's just the...
What caused that big problem of some schools never being selected is that we said every school will offer at least 2 pathways. I understand where the ministry was coming from. The decision to make every school have at least 2 pathways, in my thinking, is an admission that we didn't prepare these learners well through junior school. Very many of them didn't have teachers of STEM most of the time. So the expectation is that there shall be some flexibility to switch between pathways once you join grade 10. And you realize I was ambitious to think I can pursue STEM, but given my preparation for this level, I am just not able to continue. So I think that they insisted on that to allow for possibility of switching within the same school from one pathway to another. But the biggest challenge that will cause the crisis is the fact that junior school did not prepare learners enough to use criteria number 3, which was psychometric tests, to determine where the interest of the learner and their abilities are. As designed, if we had implemented CBE as designed, by now there will be no crisis on where learners will go when they're in grade 9, because the parent, the teacher, and the learner will be agreed by now on where the learner's strengths lie. Because that is what the system was designed to do, to make sure that we determine where the learner's strength lies and guide the learner through junior school. So by the time they get into the transition into senior school, we already know where they're going to go in terms of whether they're pursuing STEM, whether they're pursuing humanities, whether they're going to pursue arts and sport. So that has not happened. It has not happened because junior school never prepared learners really. And for that reason, we are back to exams as the main criteria of placing learners into senior schools.
I have so many questions. Just the thinking process around this. I understand the logic, like you said. There is a clear direction where this needs to go, but I think it's just the cycles in which this thing either, not even the rollout, how it's coming out, that then brings a lot of confusion. So who determines, one, a learner at that junior level, these may be the areas of interest, then push them towards that direction? Who makes that decision?
That decision, as per the curriculum design, was supposed to be a decision made by the learner, the teacher, and the parent together.
But this is the junior level.
Yes.
We're talking about what age?
We're talking about age 12 to 15. But and this should have been possible if we implemented this curriculum as designed. It should have been possible to say, for these 3 years, we have been close to this child. We have seen that they do well in math. We have seen that they do well in technical subjects. So they're going to go into STEM pathway and take a technical track. Or that we have seen they're very good in social sciences, and they're going therefore to go into social sciences stream. Or that we've seen they do well in performing arts and they do this, so they will go into arts and sport. It should have been possible. That's why a whole 3 years was dedicated to junior school, to be able to create sufficient time for interaction between the learner and the teacher and the parent to provide this guidance. However, because we didn't plan for junior school well, children got into senior school, did not have teachers for a whole year, some of them. Some of them did not have STEM teachers for 2 years, so they got STEM teachers this year. And that makes then that possibility, throws that possibility out of the window, that the teachers and the parent have learned the learner enough to guide that learner.
It almost feels like a terrible experimentation, because the cost, it's not like, you see, this is the very formative years of this child growing up, going through an education system. When we were, 844, if you skipped just one term, the repercussions will be evident in your final exams, for example. But then beyond that, it will be what then you missed, and that's why we had a situation where students then would repeat a class. In this current in these conversations, there is nothing like repeat. It's keep moving. So if we mess we mess with the education of these children at this stage, how are we going to push them to the next level if they've already missed all this? One, schools are not very well prepared. Teachers have said they're also not very well prepared. And parents are also not very well prepared. Children don't even know which direction to go. How does this look in the next coming years for the life of these children? How does it look?
That is my biggest concern, and that's why I'm saying, if I were to make the decision, everything else in the Ministry of Education will stop to make sure schools are ready for these learners come January, so that there is room to try and remedy some of the mistakes that we have made in the lives of this pioneer class. We have made mistakes by not preparing teachers in good time. When this transition was happening, and I was talking to some of the people who are making decisions then, they kept saying, teachers are just teachers. All they need is a weekend of reorientation. The term was reorientation. Truth is, the content was new. The approach was new. And the teachers needed to be trained. And they didn't do a good job of preparing teachers to implement the new curriculum. So we have grappled from one crisis to another because the original implementers of this system just threw everyone into the deep end of the swimming pool in their suits. And you have to try to swim in that state. So original mistakes are still haunting us. And I think that we are also making a few more mistakes which are augmenting the original mistakes that we shouldn't be making at this point in time. So for instance, I didn't believe that all the secondary schools we have are capable of offering STEM. So we should have allowed that there are some single pathway schools. The small sub-county schools that we have now renamed as Cluster 3 should just have been one pathway schools that will only offer humanities and social sciences. Because the gap in terms of being ready to offer STEM is so wide that I don't think there are enough resources and time to make those schools ready by January.
And in countries where this has actually worked, the rollout in phases, one of the key and most important things is first training. Then the second thing is building capacity, infrastructure. If you are then enrolling these students and they're pushing them into this space where it's just a classroom, it's just 4 walls, a desk and a chair, So it's humanities, it could be science, whatever it is. Then you're not facilitating the tools that they need then to further and continue these studies. Are we getting our priorities wrong? Because it almost feels like there is a push to just get this system out. Then we'll figure things out as we move along.
The biggest problem in Kenya is that we have had very erratic decision making at important points in time. We had very erratic decision making at the point of rolling out CBE. And at that point, I think it was politics. Anyone who said we are not ready was seen as an enemy of the establishment instead of being listened to understand. And the implementers didn't even need to listen to anyone else. They knew the stages of new curriculum implementation, they knew. But chose to skip some of important stages so that they can be able to be seen as efficient, rolling out things at an unprecedented pace. That was unimportant and unhelpful to anyone.
Doctor, you look at the education CBE at the moment as we speak, and there is the problem with the students and them not being prepared enough for the next class. Their teachers are not there. We know there's a deficit, especially on science teachers. That is a problem that does exist. But yesterday, there's an article that I read that spoke to the differences and differentiation in terms of preferential treatment among teachers themselves. That STEM teachers feel as though they are more important than the social sciences teachers. And does that exist and goes further to affect the students as they go through this entire system? So in terms of dealing with this problem that there has been talk in terms of what we need to do, what we ought not to do, but no one is picking this information and implementing it to see that this CBE gets to work. But that notwithstanding, these kids will still go to the next class.
Yeah.
But now question is, what exactly are we looking at after they graduate at the end of it all?
If we understood that these kids, regardless of what we do to them, are the future of Kenya, they will be the ones occupying the desks we are occupying now. They will be the ones treating us in hospitals. They will be the ones running the economy. If we understood that, we would actually pause our other interests of looking successful on the surface when actually beneath there's a festering wound that we are refusing to cure, and focus on how we make sure that these kids learn. Because right now, everyone charged with any responsibility wants to be seen as succeeding, whether they are succeeding or not, and not focusing on the key problem. The key problem is that we have not prepared our school system for this transition. That would have required that we stop many other things and channel resources to making this school system ready for this transition. Right now, we haven't trained secondary school teachers who are going to be receiving these learners. So we're going to tell these teachers over December, you sacrifice your December holiday
come for two
for 2 weeks training, and you'll be ready to teach come January. We need to look at there are these stories in the paper again yesterday about the math in grade 9 being too much for the kids. This is something I'd been saying for a very long time. When people are telling me primary school teachers are going to teach junior school, I told them, have you looked at the curriculum designs? The curriculum designs show most of the content in junior school is secondary school content. It's not going to be taught by P1 teachers.
P1 teachers, yeah.
And they kept arguing. And now we are here saying the content is too much. Why are we realizing now? It has been in the designs for a while. Why are we realizing now?
But the fundamental shift that we are talking about, and I want to just focus on this particular class, because we've really done them an injustice over the last 6 years. We started this without piloting the thing, and they were the students that we threw into this. We got to grade 6, and then they were going to get towards junior secondary, and books didn't come until the end of second term in that year of junior secondary. We didn't know which teachers were teaching. We had some history teachers teaching. We had some math teachers doubling up as other teachers, history doubling up. It was the same situation across board. Then they stumbled out of that, finished, and did some kind of, tumble through towards. And now they're sitting this exam in end of this term, which is going to determine how they're going to be placed. We've gone through 3 years of junior secondary school, many would argue, having learnt at the very minimal basis, because the runners of the whole system really had no idea what was going on. And I think we can be, honest enough to say that we really didn't know our finger from our nose at that point in terms of what was happening. But for some reason, like Dennis says, borrow Maliza. See, you finished and October has come and you've written an exam. And the next year you'll go to grade 10. I mean, for crying out loud. And I guess you're right. When will they see, regardless of what happens, that these are the children who will come out on the other side of it, will be the ones who will hold the country together? If we understood that, then we would be serious about the input at this point. But let's go into the nitty-gritty. Even when they were making the selection of the pathways that they will take, what kind of guidance was being given to them? Did they really understand that this is what it meant? And remember, the ministry was clear. Once you choose a pathway, that is where you stay.
I still think that there will be an opportunity to switch those pathways. I still think. For the reason that...
The same reason why they made math compulsory and then non-compulsory, and then now we're going back to compulsory?
I didn't understand that hulabalo about making math compulsory and everyone saying how it was important that you pass math. The math these kids have learned up to Form 3, up to grade 9, is sufficient to take anyone who is not going to take a science pathway through life. Is sufficient. I did not understand why the ministry flip-flopped on that one, because there was noise by a crowd, most of whom did not pass math themselves.
Wow.
saying these kids must do math. I did not understand that. The ministry should have stuck firm and said math is compulsory up to grade 9. After that, if you ask me, you don't need it. Yeah, because majority of the people speaking out here did not do math beyond Form 4. Did not. And many who attempted got the grade they will never want to talk about.
Because essentially grade 10, just to look at the grades where we are, because if you're making that comparison, Dr. Manyasa, is that grade 10 essentially is replacing what is Form 2.
Yeah, but so that is if we count the years. If we look at the content.
Yeah.
If you look at the content, the math these kids have learned up to grade 9 is sufficient for someone who is not going to take a STEM pathway. And what the ministry forgot is that when it is flip-flopping on that, just saying math will be compulsory has a cost. Because it means the number of math teachers to be available for senior school has been impacted. It has a cost. That simple statement of saying it will now be compulsory has a cost. A cost for which we do not necessarily need to meet, because they are saying it will be compulsory but not examined. Who doesn't know that whatever is not examined is never taught? Who doesn't know that? Whatever is not examined in our school system is never taught.
But we also have some cases where there are things that are examined that have not been taught, Dr. Manyasa.
We have those. I experienced that when I was in high school with a biology teacher who didn't teach us even though we were going to be examined. But whatever is not examined is normally not taught. So when we say it will be compulsory but not examined, I think we are saying we have time and resources to waste. When we shouldn't be having, because the system is facing severe resource constraint.
So, Daktari, you look at the curriculum that we have right now, CBE, and you look at 844, and everything that is happening with the implementation of CBE has been nothing but a failure, sorry to say. it has not delivered what was intended. Because here we look at the U-turn by the ministry has expanded the number of subjects from 7 to 10, redrawn the list of compulsory areas, and reignited controversy over the return of high-stakes examination. We're pretty much just going back to 844 without saying we are going back to examining students at the end of it all. And if someone just sits back, the implementation of CBE and introducing it into the education in the country, was it well thought out, or was this just another decision to say we are working on the education in the country? Because so far nothing shows that it was well thought out.
The decision to change the curriculum was well thought out. Mm-hmm. It came from the Ambo report, and so it was well thought out. Mm-hmm. The initial stages were well executed. Mm-hmm. There was a needs assessment, there was a pilot. Those initial stages were well thought out and well executed. We lost it when we decided to rush into implementation before we had even developed a costed implementation plan that says this is the kind of resources we will require at each level to enable those who are going to be resourcing the implementation to plan. Because if you're going to build, you get a bill of quantities that tells you need this much to make the foundation, you need this much to make the walls, to make the roofs, and then the finishing inside. You get that to enable you to plan resourcing the construction. We started implementation without a costed implementation plan that will enable planning for resourcing. So now we are waking up at every stage and finding we need this much. And so let's try to find it. And by the time we find it, the learners have lost half a year. Yeah, and that is where the problem is.
So shall we look at some numbers? We did them in the morning. It might be interesting for you to know what some of these numbers are. Okay. Because even with this education, whereby it looks as though, we're walking in the forward direction, but we're actually, taking many steps back. Schools are sending students home in this current term because they've not been able to receive money for them. Now, 2025 capitation for 3,280,182 learners. That is what the capitation is supposed to take care of. Now, in term 1, 50% is supposed to be paid, as you know. In term 2, 30% is supposed to be paid. And in term 3, 20%, making a total of 100% is supposed to be paid. Now, expected per learner in term 1 is 11,122 shillings. What was paid was 8,818. This is on public record. There's a balance from term 1, which ended in April, of 2,304 shillings, leaving the total undisbursed money for term 1 at 7,557,539,328. That's just term 1. In term 2, at 30%, the amount every learner should receive in capitation going to the schools is 6,673 shillings. What was paid out was 3,471 shillings, leaving a balance of 3,202 shillings. So in term 2, a total undisbursed was 10,503,142,764 shillings. Let's go to term 3, where the numbers are looking even worse. The amount at 20% to be received per capita for each student is 4,449 shillings. How much do you think that amount was paid for term 3? 0. So the amount owed, and we're already 1 week into the term, so we've got 8 left. 9,955 is the balance owed in term 3, coming to a total of 4,449, coming to a total of 14,593,529,718 shillings. Now, if you want to put it all and consolidate that, 22,244 is the amount for capitation. 12,889 is the amount that has been paid. 9,955 shillings is the balance that is owed for the year, giving a total of 32,654,211 810 shillings. Now, I'm doing this because you've just come from saying, Dr. Manyasa, that if we put the resources behind some of these things that are supposed to be done, we might see different results. 32 billion shillings is what is owed this year for capitation. This is so that students can go to school. If we can't even get them to go to school, do you really think that we're going to have schools prepared in terms of the pathways they should take? And then what is the end result that is going to come about?
You know, sometimes I get the sense that this country politics too much with basically everything. So even things that are basic, we are playing cheap politics with them. And we are compromising the future of the country, to be honest. Why? Because forget the preparation for those in grade 9 who need to go to senior school. We have those in Form 4, for whom KCSE is the most consequential exam they will ever sit.
Yes.
They are being sent home now for fees. They are going to fail to prepare. But even when they come back to school, the schools have not received capitation. That capitation is tuition fees.
Yes.
It's the money that is supposed to buy lab reagents to enable these learners prepare for their examinations. So they're going to get into the exams unprepared and end up getting results that will never reflect their ability and effort. And that is what exams are supposed to reflect. Two things: ability of the learner and the effort put into preparation. We are compromising the futures of these children, and there are very many of them. Our Form 4s are about 1 million.
About 1 million, yes.
Yeah. How do we expect ourselves to move forward as a country? Do we plan to export these children as maids? Is that our plan for them?
Well, at the moment, there's actually it's a policy, and we're exporting young people to go to these countries for jobs. Isn't that what we're doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Security, maids,
domestic managers.
Yes.
It hurts me when I see that our forefathers were shipped involuntarily out of the continent to go to work as slaves. And today, Africans, and this is not just Kenya, if you go to our neighboring countries, you find whole planes carrying these young people who are going to work as house helps abroad. And today, this generation of Kenyans is exporting our young people voluntarily because we have failed to create opportunities for them to stay and build their countries. We have betrayed this generation of kids terribly. And for me, if I return to our education sector, I think that knowing that we got into implementation of CBE unprepared, and this regime inherited that. This regime should have put everything else aside to ensure smooth transition to CBE. I do not understand why the national government came up with the housing levy. Housing is a devolved function. We should have had an education levy in the place of the housing levy to just make our schools ready. Why we are going to have such a chaotic transition? It's because everyone will want to go to a cluster 1 school.
Yeah.
And cluster 1 schools are only capable of taking 3% of the learners. Yeah. So where do we take the 97%
on the cluster,
in that scrum?
Yeah, of course, that's a question that will come out. On the cluster issue, do schools, of course, I would imagine that schools then decide that they will then be STEM schools or they will be the humanities and the arts schools. They decide on their own, this is the direction that we want to take, right?
The schools didn't decide.
Who
the
decides?
Schools applied for evaluation and approval
by the
on
ministry
the pathways that they will check. So they were evaluated
by the ministry.
By the ministry,
Okay.
and the ministry determined this school will offer 2 pathways, this one will offer 3, and they said every school will offer a minimum of 2 pathways.
Do we know the criteria that the ministry then used to evaluate and decide which pathways each school would then offer?
On paper, they were supposed to use the resource availability and staffing availability. But I also know that schools were lobbying, because now this became a resource issue. If you lobby and you have more pathways, then you'll have more numbers of learners, and therefore by capitation you get more resources. So there was lobbying. There is no doubt about that. That schools, some of which were and are even now not ready to be STEM schools, lobbied to be made STEM on the promise that we are going to try and create facilities, labs and other things that we need in readiness for January. Those same schools were hoping they will receive capitation in time and invest in preparation to be ready to be STEM school. They have not received capitation now. They are still owed capitation from first term. They are not going to be able to prepare themselves to be STEM schools by January. So we have, and I just want maybe to say this, if government people other than the Ministry of Education are listening, if you send capitation to schools, it is good economics. We have over 9,000 public schools spread across all corners of Kenya. Those schools with resources support Kadogo economy in those areas where they are. They buy vegetables from the farmers there. They buy lab reagents from small bookshops, from small shops there.
Yeah.
They help the economies of those areas. When you withhold their capitation, you're not just punishing the learners and the administrators of the schools, you are punishing the local communities around those schools. Because they are the ones who supply firewood, they supply small things to those schools, and they find livelihoods in supporting those schools. They are the ones being punished the most.
Doctor, if you look at the CBC that has been put, that we have today, or the education system is meant to react to pretty much address the current way of life that we find ourselves. So we have to have graduates who are ready for the world today and the future. But for that to happen, investment into the education sector has to happen. If you're talking about digital superhighway, we must see some semblance of that digital infrastructure in our schools. And we talk about shipping young people out of the country to go abroad. As we sit today, the industry has changed so much that someone can work from the comfort of their home because we are interconnected. But that notwithstanding, in the implementation of CBC, are we looking at the future in terms of we are preparing these students not just for today but for the future that ought to come? Because one would argue that was the dream behind CBE, but is that the dream today as we are implementing it?
Yeah, I want to believe that that dream remains. We may be stumbling in the pursuit of that dream, but I want to believe that the dream remains. We cannot afford to give up on that dream because what is the alternative if we give up? So while that dream remains, our call is to keep reflecting every day and asking ourselves, are we on course? Or is our dream not backed by effort and investment in achieving it? If it is not backed by effort and investment, we need to keep shifting the investments and putting more effort in trying to achieve this dream. Because Africa is considered a youthful continent. Everyone knows that Africa could potentially reap demographic dividends from our youthful population. But we also know that there's a flip side to it, that if we don't invest in this youthful generation, then we might get a demographic curse where everything implodes. And that is not a path, I believe, as a country we want to go. We want to make sure that we are preparing the young people to be fruitful, beneficial to the country so that we can reap the demographic dividends.
What are the fundamentals that must be addressed now if we are to save the CBA?
We need to, between now and January, have a Marshall Plan to upgrade the many Cluster 3 schools that, in my view, are not ready, especially to be STEM schools, to be able to be ready to be STEM schools. We need to be radical and say we might need to merge some schools and maybe close some. Part of the reason we have over 3,000 schools that no one chose is because they are small schools with 2-3 teachers, 100 learners. So when you take your child there, the child is basically going there to grow.
Right.
What has been happening is that those schools have been producing the grade E's and the grade D's, and since nothing fundamental has happened in them, they will just continue to do the same with the CB learners. And it is the reason most parents are shunning those schools. Why don't we look at where these schools are? And for those that are too close in proximity with each other, just merge them and close some of them. I've gone to Coast and there are schools sharing fences, several schools. From this one to this one to this one.
We only build one side of a fence. You come do the next.
They're basically the same school. But now, because we have made them several, so this one has a shortage of a math teacher, this one has no English teacher, this other one has no science teacher. Why don't we just collapse the fences in between them, make them one school. Make all the teachers who are here available to all the learners, and there will be no teacher shortage in the new school. Each one of them has a teacher shortage, but combined, they don't have any teacher shortage.
And these are situations that you have seen?
Yes. It's true that we have schools sharing.
I mean,
we even have a school on ground floor and another on first floor of a building. Public schools. Each one of them with a school head instead of both having one school head.
There's even a school in Dandora that I went to where there's an additional classroom that was added on top of this structure, and apparently costed millions to set it up. It is just a structure. Then I asked the teacher, how are these children going to go up there? Because you look at even the safety of children getting into that class, yet you're pushing this syllabus, you're pushing CBE. And my question, because you've talked about those schools that you've given the classic case of the coast, is there a danger that then we're going to lock learners, especially from either poor families or from those very less privileged areas in this country, and you're going to judge them the same level playing field with the rest that, for example, have labs, for example, have good infrastructure, but you have somebody deep in Turkana, in Lodwar, and some even here in Nairobi, who are not at the same level, yet you're pushing this same standard. Is there a danger that there are a lot of learners who are going to be locked out into some low-paying technical careers eventually?
As with our agenda, we are pushing for something called education justice. And we consider just education a state where society affords for all its children access to the quality of education that a wise parent desires for his or her own children. So that if we attain that kind of state, then we know that two things will happen. One, that what learners get out of school will only reflect their ability and their effort. So when we use that education to place them in society, we are sure that we are getting the best in the best positions. We are not getting those who could afford. We are getting the best. And as a society, we reap benefits in two ways. One, we create more stable societies because, and let me paint this picture for you. you grew up with some people in the village whom you left there, and today when you go back to the village, you give them casual jobs to help you with this and that. If you are in the same class with that person and you performed well, they either dropped out because they didn't want to stay in school, or they were struggling to stay in school and ended up dropping out. When you give them that casual job, they appreciate. They see you as helping them. But if you are in class with someone who was the one helping you pass math and English, and for the reason that you could afford to pay and go to good schools, you continued, but they were forced to drop out because they couldn't pay, how do you give them that casual job?
Can't.
Difficult.
What do you think goes through their mind when you give them that casual job and they know they were better than you, and the only reason now you are the one giving them the job is because you could afford?
They end up feeling that those were privileged and the others were not.
Yeah, so
it's a question of equity.
It creates tension in society and threatens stability.
What metrics do you think you can use then to qualify that, okay, look, we have CBE with all its challenges and everything. Let's look at the career pathways. Are they working or not? What are the metrics that you would then use to measure whether this thing is working?
We are yet to get into those pathways. We'll get into them next year. So in the meantime, we're just raising alarm on areas where we feel there is inadequate preparation to implement those pathways, so that we can be able to make sure when learners are enrolled in them that they actually work. As it is now, there are schools that are capable of providing the different pathways, and we know that learners who go to those schools will be able to benefit from being there. There are schools that are not capable of offering some of the pathways that they have lobbied to be included in because they wanted resources. Those schools need to be made ready. If they are not made ready, the learners who go there are going to be trapped into a dark tunnel to nowhere. Let me say a school that has been producing E's and C's in sciences. When you now take there a child to learn only sciences, because we have schools that have been managing to produce grade C and grade D plus as an average.
Yeah.
Their top student has been getting a C, but this will come from getting a B minus in history, a B in Kiswahili, a B in CRE, and then they get E's in maths, physics, biology, and they get an average of C minus or D plus. If you take someone there to do the sciences only,
you're not.
their mini grade is E.
It's more like in our system, how we were told, okay, these are the subjects you're going to do, is the stream. When you are getting to the registration point, unaambiwa wewe enda Nyati, wewe ni Simba, wewe Kifaru. So Kifaru, by the time you get into Form 3, for me personally, I ended up doing physics, chemistry, biology. I did all the sciences plus mathematics. I hated physics. I was good in biology. But there are subjects that actually were pulling me down, and they were not areas of my interest. But because where you've been registered, you've been told this is now what you're going to do, eventually it affects your mean score.
The reason we actually wanted to reform this curriculum, because I'm also an 844, was to say, can we allow learners to pursue what they are interested and capable of? Because I will always regret this. My head boy in high school, guy who scored straight A's in all the humanities, couldn't join university because he wasn't just good in the science, and they pulled him down.
They did.
And this is the guy who scored the only A in the now Busia County in English in our year. He was the only one. But he still didn't go to university because science pulled him down. And he didn't need them. He had careers that he will pursue without math, without physics.
Exactly.
But they pulled him down. That was one of the strong points in the change to CBE.
Are we looking at a mess?
Let us allow learners to pursue what they are strong in.
Dr. Manyasa, really quickly, are we looking at a mess come January?
It could be a mess, it could be remedied depending on what we do between now and December.
got a few months, about 3 months actually, to see if we can pick something up. But it just looks like a gargantuan task, but we need to start picking at it in one way or another. Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa is leading the charge at the USAWA agenda and has been here with us this morning. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. It's a little bit daunting to look at what is ahead of us, but the hope is that this is seen. First of all, that this is seen, and then probably you'll then be able to start to do something about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for making it part of Kenya's biggest conversation this Tuesday. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.